If you've ever asked yourself the question, why do unhealthy foods taste better than healthy foods? It's actually a really good question. And it does have an answer. But for example, everyone knows spinach and kale and leafy greens like that are considered superfoods. And given that they're so healthy, it's natural to ask, why don't they taste better? Right? Like, why don't they taste better than a greasy cheeseburger, for example? The the scientific answer for this question is called antagonistic pleiotropy. There will be a link in the description if you want to read about it. Basically, what it means is that evolution has to choose things that benefit you in the short term, even if they cost you in the long term. So, for example, like that greasy cheeseburger example, the advantage it gives you in the short term is that it provides excess calories. If you were to eat like that all day, it would almost guarantee that you would be in a caloric surplus, which in the context of jungle living is extremely advantageous because if you were to ever not have any food sources, you would be reliant on your body fat to sustain you, and if you didn't have any, you would likely just starve to death. And so these unhealthy foods that taste good, they taste good because they're essentially keeping you alive longer in the jungle at the expense of your lifespan. Now, because we don't live in the jungle anymore and we can just go to the supermarket, we have the opportunity to eat healthy foods that extend your life. The problem is that evolution hasn't really caught up to this very modern phenomenon. So the foods that are really healthy still don't taste good because our bodies are still primed to opt for short-term survival and reproduction over longevity. One example of a disease that actually still prospers because of antagonistic pleiotropy is Huntington's disease. If you're unfamiliar with Huntington's, it's basically a guaranteed death sentence by like 40 to 60 ish, and it's completely genetic, and there's no cure for it. Um, Now, if all it was a death sentence, evolution would have weeded it out over a long enough period of time. But that's not all it is. So Huntington's disease actually carries some short-term reproductive advantages, and that's why it sticks around. So the reproductive advantages are the Huntington's group has a higher fertility rate than non-Huntington's, and people with Huntington's actually have stronger anti-cancer properties. They actually are able to identify and kill off cancer cells better than people who don't have Huntington's. That is why Huntington's hasn't been essentially removed from our gene pool. And not to mention, if you eat unhealthy enough, Huntington's either wouldn't kill you anyway because you would have died due to your poor diet, or if it does kill you before your diet would, it's not that many years difference. And actually, so if you were to eat unhealthy enough to where your diet killed you before Huntington would anyway, then actually having Huntington's would be an advantage because it wouldn't change your lifespan at all. It would just give you the short-term benefits. Yeah, this is why like a slice of pizza or a greasy cheeseburger tastes better than spinach, kale, um, potatoes, like whole foods, because again they're calorically dense, and so they essentially activate these our taste buds that are still primed for short-term benefits at the expense of our long-term health. And so it's basically just a fact that we still live in a time where evolution hasn't caught up. And so if you want to eat for your health, you essentially have to sacrifice some taste, which objectively isn't that big of a deal because when you taste food, it lasts for mere seconds, but the effects that it has can last for weeks, months, or years, depending on how much you've eaten. Um, Not to mention, this also kind of brings up an interesting point that 100,000 years in the future, after maybe even more, but a long time in the future, healthy foods might be the ones that taste good because evolution was able to select for them. Because for the most part, as long as you live in a first world country, you can just go to the grocery store and get the foods you need. So you can actually choose foods that are healthy for you, not ones that are either necessary for survival, which are detrimental to your long term health, but also, you wouldn't have to worry about any reproductive advantages due to, like, not starving to death, because food is plentiful, at least in first world countries. So this is the reason that healthy foods taste worse than unhealthy foods. And so it's basically evolution hasn't been able to catch up to the fact that we don't live in the jungle anymore, and we have the ability to choose foods that are good for our long-term health instead of the ones that give us short-term advantages. Basically, we don't need those short-term advantages anymore because, you know, it's very unlikely that you would run out of food in a first world country. So, something to think about. If it takes you more than 5 minutes to apply to hundreds of jobs, you're wasting your time. Sign up at jobhelper.cc and let AI do the work for you.